Hey, ladies. I just wanted to say real quick, I really appreciate all my supporters and people out there that have so many positive things to say and encouragement as I'm making my channel. It really helps a lot. It really keeps me going. So thank you so much. You know what? I think that as transgender people, we sometimes kind of either assume that, we have no idea why we're this way. That science, society, doctors, whatever, they have no idea why we're this way. Or that it's like we have some kind of transgender DNA or something. You know that our DNA is somehow exactly the same as like a cis woman's DNA or something or whatever. That we have that is something like that. And you know what? The truth is, ladies, neither one of those are true. I mean, it cannot be said that science knows this is exactly where transgender comes from. That's not true. But there are some ideas. There are some things in nature and in nurture that are, I guess you could say, very common in transgender people. There have been a few studies done on this stuff and, patterns and similarities, okay, so that they can have a good idea of what goes on in the womb or during childhood, and that is typical of, I guess you could say, of transgender people. Okay? So usually we would say for all of us, where we're transgender, no matter what we are when we come out, who we are is some combination of nature and nurture. Okay, it's a combination of our biology and a combination of the way we were raised. Okay, of those two things. So first, let's talk about the nature. When we talk about nature, especially as transgender people, we're not really so much talking about DNA. Okay, it's not really so much about what's in your genes. I mean, maybe it's a little bit it is. I mean, everything is impacted by our genes, right? What it really is fetal development. Okay? That specifically, babies that have whatever their whatever, I'm getting my words mumbly here, sorry. Whatever their hormones are in their brains, okay, during development, generally is the direction that they go. So that, even as an infant, even as a fetus, a baby with a little bit more testosterone in its brain, okay, will develop a male brain. And a fetus with, without it basically, I guess you can just say, or with more estrogen, will develop a more female brain. Okay, if that makes sense. So, sometimes there are physical conditions that you might have, okay? Um, Things that you might be lacking, certain hormones and different things that your body might not have had or that might be low in, and so you have lower hormone levels than normal. It could be that sometimes our mothers take certain medications or do certain things, and that lowers let's say our testosterone levels or raises them, depending on, male, female, transgender. And that affects how our brains developed. Okay? There was a study that was done, I don't remember who, but I read this a few years ago. It was on babies whose mothers took a drug called phenobarbital. Now, my mother didn't take that, but I did when I was a small child for many years, a pretty big dose of it. What they discovered was that they did tests on actually primates and mice and things like that, and they did other research on mothers who had taken it. And they found that it reduces testosterone levels in the brain. Okay, that people who are on phenobarbital, which is what people would take for something like epilepsy, for example, and they used it as an anticonvulsant for mothers back like in the 50s, I believe. But what it does is it reduces testosterone levels in the brain. So you had these babies whose testosterone levels were pushed down in their brains. When they went back and they tracked down something like 200 male babies at this hospital who had been born at this hospital and whose mothers had taken this drug, they found like something like 3 or 4 times as many of them were either gay or transgender than normal society. Okay, than society in general. Okay, and so that they found, therefore, not a cause, but a correlation between those two. Okay, and like I said, we already know that the brain of a transgender person is more like the brain of the gender that they identify with than it is than their natal sex. Okay, so there's those things. It really is much more hormones than, I guess what you could say, DNA. Okay, so we know that. Now, what it was that affected your DNA or your hormones in your brain or whatever when you were in your mother's womb, I really have no idea. I would say this, that it's not so much your mother's hormones, it's yours. Okay, it was whatever your hormones were. That even as a fetus, there was hormones. Okay, that are there or not there, and that affects your development. Okay, the second thing is nurture. Okay, that honestly, it doesn't totally make you transgender, but there are patterns for transgender women, especially for gay and transgender women, gay men and transgender women, there are kind of certain things that are patterns. Okay, honestly, that we are more likely to be raised in a home with an extremely domineering mother or really strong female figures. Okay, in my house, my mother was an extremely overbearing mother. She was kind of too strong of a female figure, and the dads, I guess I had a stepdad and a regular dad at different times. She kind of ground them down. Okay, as men, she really beat them down. To where most people would say that they were totally whipped. So I kind of grew up in that environment. And at the time, I didn't feel anything about it. I don't really know how that would affect me now per se, but people who are gay or transgender are more likely to have been raised in that scenario, okay, than the reverse of it. Okay, so that's one example. So, I can't go through all the nature and nurture things. If you're really curious, you can do a lot of your own research. But we do have some ideas. Okay, we do have some ideas. Anyway, those are just my thoughts, ladies.